Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to No Nut November. What's that? No Nut November is cancelled, according to Twitter? I have to go for no apparent reason at all. Just before we start, I would like to point out I've just had a new lip piercing, so if I start lisping and having struggle pronouncing the English words and stuff, then that's why, just to let you know ahead of time. But let's get straight into the video, shall we? Ladies and gents, welcome to our Khora deep dive. In these deep dives, we take a look at frames that I think have the potential to go above and beyond, to take your gameplay to a whole nother level. Whether that be from amazing ability combos, or maybe in Khora's case, how you can go from a typical CC type of focus, how most play her to then utilize not only the CC, but then to extend that to an insatiable amount of damage, and just how you're going to do that. So in essence, we take a frame, we look at their fundamentals, and then we show that there's more to a frame than what might lie on the surface. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of this video, I know I don't need to ask this, because I know you're all following me on Twitter already, right? Right? But for those who have committed a form of heresy and not followed me on Twitter and Twitch, there's a link down in the description. Go do it before I call the exterminatus on you, because there is lots of stuff we do on Twitter and Twitch that I'm sure you would all enjoy. Okie dokie, ladies and gentlemen. If you're watching this video, we are going under the assumption that you already have an initial understanding of Khora and her fundamentals. And if you don't, well, you can always go check my previous video that we uploaded before this one, because that is a Khora's beginner's guide, with all the BDSM related jokes you can shake a whip at. And then, when you're done watching that, you can come back here, because in this video, we're going to elaborate on what I mentioned in our beginner's guide about how Khora can not only be the queen of CC, and also utility, but also have rampant bursts of damage that make even Excalibur shiver with shame. We know Khora is a good frame, and it's been apparent for quite some time that she's been one of those frames that is designed around utility and the support role of her crowd control. The thing to pay attention to is that she's not only good for the CC and crowd control, she has a bit more of a nuanced playstyle, where you can actually rely more on her damage whilst maintaining decent crowd control. So through the course of this video, we're going to explain how this works, why this works, and how you can turn her into an absolute beast of not only beast taming, but also into a frame that can deal humongous red crits. So to build potency with Khora, we're going to be relying on her Whipclaw. This is where all of this damage comes from. The Whipclaw isn't something you'd really pull out at a family dinner table, let's face it, unless you really want to show your family just how much whips excite you. And this whip certainly has a lot to excite you with, so I don't know whether that'd really be relevant, but with 200% base crit damage multiplier, 20% crit chance, and 20% status chance by default, it's certainly something that even without modding can actually be really powerful just by default. However, modding for even a small amount of power strength and with nothing else attached will cause this Whipclaw to do good damage by itself. But here's the thing, Whipclaw scales its damage based not only on your modding, but the weapon and mods on your weapon you have equipped, and that goes to an nth degree. Additionally, it also scales based on your combo count scaling mods too. So here are the steps you're going to need to excel your damage and allow your Whipclaw to hit hard. The first element is a stat stick. The stat stick is a weapon that has a high disposition. This allows a ribbon to be attached that will help excel the damage. Now, if you don't have something that could be considered a stat stick, you just need to rely on the fact that the mods you have on your weapon will translate into damage for your Whipclaw. So for the sake of simplicity, just make sure you're modding for as much raw base damage as possible with scalability as well. The build that I have on screen will work incredibly well as a stat stick on any weapon. And at that point, if you don't have a ribbon, you can replace the ribbon with basically anything. But the two most suggested stat sticks to use for the sake of their high disposition and general usage is the Maya or the Jaw. Again, you can equip the build that I've shown with the ribbon or without. At the end of the day, you just want to make sure that you have a weapon that is going to help translate into good damage for your Whipclaw. Now, the ribbon itself, you want to be disposition 5, because this disposition 5 ribbon will give you the most amount of stats for your Whipclaw. On moving on to the notion of the mods with the Riven, you also want to make use of accumulating Whipclaw. Accumulating Whipclaw scales based off of power strength. And even with a baseline of 100% power strength, you're going to get a scaling amount of damage for each 3 enemies you hit. At 100% power strength, you're going to be getting in and around 300% bonus damage or thereabouts once you've started hitting the enemies at max stack. The augment is most certainly a fundamental attributing factor as to how you get all this potency out of her, and does help scale yourself to the higher levels as well. To compound that, your pet is also then very important. Equipping a sentinel, such as the Helios, and then equipping something like the Deconstructor will allow you to kind of use your sentinel as a stat stick in of itself. Attaching the Gladiator mods to it will then allow you to get that extra scalability from things such as the Gladiator set bonus. This then compounds onto your scalability for your combo count and helps push your damage even further. Then, to finalize that, and this more attributes to the consistency of your damage, you want to make use of the Nariman focus tree and use the skill Power Spike. Power Spike allows you to maintain your combo count without it all dropping off the second you lose your combo count multiplier. Combining all of this together, you will have a winning equation to do some of the funnest whip-cracking DPS in the game. However, you do have to understand how this damage works in a practical usage. So let's take a quick look at how this works in practice, shall we? Keeping in mind that there is some wiggle room in terms of your builds and everything else, but so long as you're making use of these individual categories, you will start seeing some heightened damage from the word go. Just excelling that damage comes down to the practical usage of it. When it comes to actually executing this and the fundamentals, really just running in willy-nilly, you're going to get good damage just because you've set it up decently. But there are things you can do to build your damage quicker and far more efficiently. For the most part, it's about chaining your whip onto as many enemies as possible. And really, seeing as most of your builds in this sort of notion are going to be making use of a good amount of range, Ensnare really helps to set these combos up by tugging in large amount of enemies and making sure they're all clumped up so you can slap them all together with your whip. Anytime you're in an open room and feel there are a good amount of enemies around, slap your Ensnare down and utilize how it clumps them up to build your combo count and also your multipliers. With the builds we show later, you'll have a fast mass pulling ability to give all the bodies you'll need to dismember and to build not only your combo count but also your accumulating Whipclaw. The pivotal asset around all of this is your combo count. Now, the combo count will define how much damage you're dealing because of all the scalable mods you have with your Gladiator mod set, your Blood Rush, all that kind of stuff. But if you can maintain your combo count efficiently, that's where the damage comes from. So you can, in theory, use your melee weapon to build your combo count up by itself, unless you have a Riven on that weapon that makes your attack speed like mine. But so long as you're keeping your combo count building in whatever manner you so choose, you'll be hitting red crits in no time. You can utilize a few things to make this easier and much more streamlined. Combo count lengthening mods will help you maintain your combo count and build it faster. Utilizing Power Spike from your focus tree, as we mentioned before, will help maintain it, as well as the Power Spike will mean your combo count degrades at a 0.5 ratio rather than just all being lost instantly. The point being here is the quicker you maintain your combo count and the more efficiently you maintain your combo count, the better your damage will be. You always want to take into consideration your mod types as well. At the end of the day, damage is damage, but if you can translate that into good element damage, you can also take advantage of certain enemy weaknesses as well. With your modding for things like viral, you're going to be affecting a large amount of enemies with viral, and I would generally recommend viral, radiation, or corrosive just for the sheer purpose of how broad spectrum that damage type is. But take it from your personal preference and how you want to inflict this damage as to what elements you so use. But when it comes to the builds, there are certain things you definitely don't want to miss, and that is your scalability mods. Everything else can be down to personal preference, however. Just as long as you have the scalability, you'll see your damage rise. Now, this deep dive would be a little bit superficial if we just talked about the linear nature of her Whipclaw, and I feel like that's what a lot of people end up doing and kind of forget that she still has the ability of being a good utility in crowd control frame. So let's have a little talk about that, shall we? The build that I'm going to show here is what I like to call, and very professionally, the breast of both. Now, the way to look at Khora's general modding semantics are the following. The less range you mod for, the more power strength you can put on. But And although, yes, the more power strength you mod for, the higher your damage will be and the higher your Whipclaw will scale, the range is what allows you to scale your damage efficiently. Having the range not only helps you scale your damage efficiently, but it also allows you to make use of your other abilities. And realistically, because of the lack of power strength you don't necessarily need, you can, in essence, replace those power strength mods with augments. So you're always going to want accumulating Whipclaw. That's a certainty. But putting Pilfering Strangledome on there, you not only then have the ability of loot duplication, but you then also have the ability to deal a huge amount of damage as well. This is the kind of thing you'll see a lot in the Steel Path or for high-end farming, where you're loot duplicating and dealing the damage at the same time. And I would never recommend going I would never really say you want to go less than 200% range. Yeah, if you want to go more power strength, there's nothing wrong with that. But you'll often find that although you'll hit harder, the lack of enemies being hit ends up being more of an issue, and you'll find it harder to maintain your combo count to a diligent level. So 200% power strength is kind of the golden rule. Sorry, 200% power range is the golden rule with this. And then if you want to put Pilfering Strangledome on there, you're either going to replace something of a survivability mod, or you get rid of a bit more power strength. So the kind of pivotal notions are the checklist we mentioned earlier, 200% power range, and then ideally 100% power strength. You kind of want some efficiency as well, in the sense that because you're going to be spamming your 1 and your 4 at this point, you're going to be needing the constant casts to be going out. So the Streamline and Fleeting Expertise, you'll kind of mix between them depending on what you're doing. If you're going for accumulating Whipclaw and just focusing on the damage, and you don't need to necessarily duplicate loot, then Fleeting Expertise is fine, because you don't necessarily need that much duration in the first place. But the second you decide to do a hybrid build, you definitely want to get rid of Fleeting Expertise and change to Streamline instead. That extra duration you get will allow your 4 to stay up for as long as possible, and still give you enough efficiency to make use of spamming your 1. So to finish this all off, the core of Khora's... a joke that wasn't even in the script. The core of Khora's power and utility is basically going under the scalability you mentioned earlier, utilizing Stat Stick, the Riven, the Augments, the Sentinel, and your Naramon Focus Tree, and then making sure you hit the thresholds of at least 200% power range, and then enough power strength to make use of everything else. Khora is a fundamentally amazing frame, and one that offers versatility and just general amazing damage. So if you ever want to take a frame that can excel into the high levels above most other frames that are a bit more simple, Khora is definitely one to aim for. Similar to how we explained Baruch being able to scale his damage to the nth degree as well. And although I'm not massively fond of making these deep dives, it's always worth knowing that there are frames that are more than what their superficial levels show. There are a lot of frames out there that if you put the time and effort into them, you can get so much more out of. And that's the video, ladies and gentlemen. As always, deep dives aren't necessarily my forte. I like doing them every now and again just to show the occasional frame that I think could do with a little bit more attention, and to maybe help you out getting through the star chart if you need help with it, with like Steel Path or whatever else. So you won't see many of these in the future, but whenever I find a frame that needs a bit more attention, we'll look into it. Otherwise, look out for a lot more videos coming in the future. I promise I'll get more than one a week up at some point in the near future. And make sure you drop by the Twitch for daily streams as well. If you want to suggest a frame for a deep dive, please leave a comment down below. Subscribe, like the video, all that arbitrary bollocks you're meant to do for these kind of things. I'll see all of you top hatters in the next video. Ta-ra!